Good, Randy. How you doing?
Excellent. Thank you. Welcome, everybody, to episode number 145 of Tech Sales Insights. Really excited to have Kevin Purcell, longtime friend and colleague here with us. We've got a great new topic, successful selling to and with global systems integrators. Otherwise, will be referred to as GSIs the rest of this podcast. So certainly great group to get some leverage with, to sell more, and something that a lot of companies really just don't do well with. So we also have, for those that are members of Sales Community, thanks so much. Tucker will post our fall free link. So if you are not members, you can click on this link and get a free membership. And we have Sandler as our sponsor for today, who's the sales training sponsor of Sales Community, and a great group. Everybody, I think, has known of them, over the years. And I try and dumb down my explanation, but basically they've got a great kind of low cost kind of online library that's got everything under the sun. And they kind of scale up from that model to kind of train the trainer to kind of on site, which obviously would be a little bit more expensive, but certainly great value through the whole training process for sure. And Tucker is behind the scenes helping us as always. So Tucker, thank you so much for that. So jumping into it here, Kevin lives in Naples, so enjoy seeing you down there. And interest besides work is work and family is guitar and working out to an extreme. So as we're talking before, your personal determination and desire to win and lead teams by example led to you competing in 7 New York City marathons, which is crazy, and 3 New York City triathlons. And you did those all after the age of 40. And the first marathon you ran for your friends that unfortunately were lost in the World Trade Center bombing that year. And you only had 6 weeks to train, but you did it. I mean, it must have been just physical and emotional, just amazing for you, huh?
I would tell you, Randy, I'm going to pay for it as I get older. I can assure you.
There you go. I'm getting a new hip between November 3rd. I'm getting a new left hip down in Naples. So, and I didn't do any marathons or any triathlons at all. So a couple intro stories here. So certainly I've worked with Kevin over the years, doing a bunch of different things, but certainly always, on the game, great partner, great relationship, great executing across the board. But some other tidbits here we have from our some mutual friends, Steve Gordon, who's executive at HPE, told some story about you meeting your wife roaming around the Taste of Naples event. What was the deal with that? Just briefly.
Yeah, real quick. So my wife, who lived in Naples, actually was out on the town at this food and wine festival, and Steve happened to know her, and we went over there, and she had just gotten off a long-term relationship. Long story short, her mother says, "Don't worry about it. The guy that you're going to end up marrying is the guy that's going to walk through your front door." And that day, I actually walked through her front door. So, quick one.
Great story. And from Steve Hirsch, who's CRO of Vertana, says Kevin is a polished sales executive who's innovative and thinks disruptively. He wrote the book on developing GSI partnerships that drive scale, profitability, and exponential growth. He is high integrity and knows how to execute while developing strong teams. I'm honored to be a colleague and learn from him every time we connect. Frank Rausch, who's channel chief at Cato Networks, says Kevin's a great friend and leader. Have worked with Kevin at HPE and Checkpoint, builds awesome teams with an exclamation point on execution. And then lastly, from Tiffany Ulch, who's a strategy leader at AWS. KP is a great mentor and played a major role in setting me on my own executive path. He cares about the whole person, work, family, and health. He sets a great example of how to lead, and I'm grateful for the time I was able to spend with him. So all pretty good stuff there. You should be proud.
Yeah, I'm very honored by all three, and 4 actually. I keep forgetting Steve, but the only thing, I'll just take this opportunity, Randy, if it's okay with you, since you brought up Frank Rausch. Frank and I worked at Checkpoint together out of Israel, and I just want to send my heartfelt, thoughts to the families there. It's just a horrible thing, and I know that there's a lot of people suffering right now.
Yes, absolutely. I meant to start off with that, but yes, awful, and certainly thoughts and prayers for everybody over there for sure. So jumping into it, take us through your career background. So maybe first talk about your first job. I always like to ask people their first jobs after Keene University.
Yeah, I don't know if it's Kane or Kane. I always said Kane, but
Keene, okay.
yeah. So when I graduated with a computer degree, I also had a minor in business, and I at that point in time we had a computer program location where I actually worked at the data center. And long story short, that was back in the days when we had JCL cards and we were putting through the mainframe, and we were actually programming in assembler and COBOL. So I decided to take my first job out of school as a programmer. And after 1 year, I said, although I like programming and I like the technology, I just felt like sitting in a cubicle all day was not me. And my personality is more about meeting people, building relationships, and getting feedback, and really looking at how you could solve problems in the business world with technology. So I ended up taking a sales job through a friend at AT&T, who was the largest employer in New Jersey. And I spent 5 years carrying a bag, learned telco services and products, and then AT&T actually got into selling the Unix computer. So I started selling Unix systems. At that point, I had left AT&T after about 5 years and moved into Silicon Valley relational database companies like Informix, Sybase, which was very big in the financial services Wall Street area, and then moved into Oracle, where I had some very successful years there. Had some great experiences with some key executives closing big deals, especially in the telco arena. And then at that point, I got into infrastructure, spent 12 years at HPE. And of course, I owe a lot to you, Randy. Really appreciate all the opportunities you gave me there, and built a career out of selling infrastructure and moving into the channel and doing some other roles around sales enablement and things like that. So that was a great learning experience. And then after that, I had gone over to Checkpoint for cybersecurity and learned that field. Got a lot of exposure in that area of technology, and then went to Hitachi and been selling infrastructure through the GSIs ever since. So that's just a real quick broad brush view of my career.
Great. So as we get into the questions here, for anybody watching or listening along, feel free to post any comments or post any questions. And we got Tucker behind the scenes that will shag those for us. So for those that don't know, kind of dumbed down version of who GSIs are.
Yeah, so it stands for Global System Integrators. There's probably 20 or so of them in the world. I would say, out of those 20, there's probably 15 that are truly global, and then the others are what I would call more regional SIs. The fact is that GSIs actually have almost 10% of the total marketplace within the IT marketplace. So if you think about IT in say 2022, that's probably about $7.5 trillion TAM. Almost 10% of that is going through SIs. So wow. Actually 53% of the business going through the channel is actually through the global system integrators.
Wow. And then maybe rattle off some of the names.
Yeah, so folks like Atos, DXC, the big ones, Accenture. There's also others like Deloitte, KPMG, and E&Y that are more known for their advisory services. They do a lot of consulting type, services, but there's plenty of them.
Gotcha. And then what's your view on why GSIs are important?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously the numbers speak for themselves. I think companies are missing out on opportunities truly to expand their markets without working with the GSIs. If you're a company, an OEM or a technology company, for example, that has made the decision to to really drive the indirect channel in your business as a go-to-market, I truly believe that if you're not including the GSIs, then you're probably missing out on a big chunk of opportunity. So, the other thing that I would say, just a couple quick points around this is, GSIs, not only is the TAM there, but also the fact that there's stickiness. If you can integrate your products into their stack solutions, you're going to get a lot of product stickiness. You're also going to get a lot of customer exposure that you wouldn't normally have. You'll get new logos. There's so many benefits in driving. The flip side, though, is it's hard. It's extremely hard to work with these complex organizations.
Gotcha. And typically they're selling to if there's a pyramid of accounts, typically they'd be selling more to the enterprise global type accounts, not really a commercial and definitely not an SMB, correct?
Yeah, you bring up a great point, Randy. The one thing that I would say is that they're calling and they're actually selling to the board. I mean, if you're let's just say a storage provider, you're probably talking to the IT storage guy,
right,
or girl. So, I think it's important that when you're going on creating a strategy for your sales campaign in an account, that you understand who the GSIs are in that account, because they understand the bigger picture. They understand what is the digital transformational journey. They may actually create it for the customer, and then you can plug in your solutions into that journey, and that's the ultimate goal.
Yeah, and with these larger accounts, typically they'd have how many employees on that pursuit team?
Yeah, well, let me start by saying, out of those 20 SIs that I was mentioning, Randy, that's 5.5 million employees. So just to get a feel for what that is, I mean, you're talking, and we have a lot of Indian-based SIs that I've worked with over the years. And I mean, there's thousands and thousands of employees there in India, actually responding to RFPs and RFIs. So when you have an enterprise pursuit, you have a very complex organization you're dealing with. You have an industry vertical, very likely. It could be, let's just say it's a banking customer. You have a bunch of folks in that practice or that vertical practice that are focused on that pursuit. Then there's the cloud, for example. Maybe they're moving to the cloud, and it's a hybrid cloud opportunity. So now you have the cloud practice involved. Then you have the infrastructure practice involved. Then there might be some other cyber, component in the digital transformation. Now you have the cyber practice involved. So they all come together. But what's really interesting is all of these practices have their own P&Ls. So they're competing for business internally. Sometimes they come together very nicely and you work together on the journey of closing the business. But there are times when you have to figure out, where do you put your stakes? What horse are you betting on? And really, how do you really address the complexity of these type of organizations?
Yeah. So given the complexity, what are some suggestions in terms of how to align and leverage the GSIs to help us sell more?
Yeah. So part of your book, I actually included the practice that I've used over my career called VSEM, VSEM. And
we'll just do a little timeout. So Tucker, you can post a link for the book. And Kevin's is, where the heck are you? Here you go. You're page 99, and it's number 71. Vision, strategy, execution, metrics, VSAM approach to growing your business. So thanks for your contribution.
Absolutely. And my kids are reading it, by the way. But the practice, it's pretty well known in the industry, I think. But I use it because if you're coming into let's say a new role where you're trying to figure out how to drive your new business, you're trying to build it with not only your direct sellers and your channel, but you see a great opportunity with the GSIs. So in this case, you create your vision, you determine what buckets you're going to get your revenue from, you determine, what are the key customers you're going to pursue, the segmentation model. And then once you determine your vision, then you want to put together your strategy. strategy will absolutely include your go-to-market. It will also include, what are some of the GSIs you want to pursue, and what geographies do you think you can get the most return on your investment and bang for your buck. And then, of course, execution is all about putting the right players on the field, putting it in the right areas, putting them in the right roles. And then finally, how are you going to measure success? And that's all about the metrics, right? KPIs. In my case, when I'm driving a global partner business, I'm very much focused on activity, very much focused on, joint offerings, because the joint offerings is going to get you to where you need to be in terms of driving revenue and expanding your products across different customer sets. So that's just a summary of how I utilize that VSEP.
Gotcha. Very cool. And then so kind of aligning with the GSIs, and then some of the best go-to-market approaches. What would be some thoughts there?
Yeah, well, if you decide you want to invest in a go-to-market with the GSIs, as I mentioned, it's complex. So you have to determine if you're willing to make these investments. And when I say investments, I truly mean significant investments. Just to give you a perspective, Google wanted to compete with AWS and Azure, obviously, in the cloud marketplace. And what they did was they quickly realized that they need to do some catch up and really integrate themselves with the GSIs, because the GSIs are the ones that actually are with the customer, with the board, talking about digital transformation. And with the fact that many customers want to move to the cloud, they're relying on these GSIs to determine how to define that journey and how to do it. So what happens is in this case, Google decided to work with 15 out of those 20 GSIs that I was mentioning and create joint offerings for that. They actually grew their business over 100% between years 21 and 2022. They invested almost $1 billion in that business, but it's significant because now they don't have catch up as much as they were before, but now they're setting themselves up for true success. The other example I'll use real quick, Randy, is on AWS. AWS has invested almost $1 billion over the last 5 years with Deloitte, developing joint offerings to go after joint customers in the marketplace. So these are significant investments. And if you truly want to be successful with the GSIs, you have to be prepared to make those investments monetarily. On top of that, it's not just the dollars that you're spending. You have resource time, and that's significant dollars as well. You need to hire a global team because regional teams don't work with the GSIs. They expect that you invest in them from a training perspective. There's training programs that need to be prepared to actually train thousands of people at the GSI, and they can't just be high-level trained. Once you have a customer references, which of course is the basically the reward at the end of the rainbow, you need to be able to replicate those wins. And the way you do that is bringing deep understanding of your solution and products with the GSI. So you can imagine all the investments and resources that it takes to actually be successful with the GSIs.
Gotcha. So certainly those numbers and billions examples used with AWS and Google are great. So, if you're not one of the top 5 or top 10 companies in the world like they are, if you're kind of maybe smaller down the stack, what would be kind of a skinnier version of kind of how to do practically a joint go-to-market and sell more with GSIs? What suggestions would you have there?
Yeah, great question. So my suggestion would be this, pick one, make one successful, right? If you can, depending on, what it is, your vision is and your strategy, I think you pick one that is willing, and it could be one that may not be number one in its industry. It might be 2 or 3 or even 4 or 5. But if they're willing to invest in you and in your company, and they're willing to put resources and dollars behind it, they're the companies that you want to make the investments in. if you try to just throw over the wall, if you want to work with Accenture, for example, that's a very heavy lift, and you're probably likely not going to see the return on your investment. But if you could pick just one GSI, maybe you have a GSI that you've worked with before that you have a win in, or you have an opportunity to help them maybe move up the stack in their rankings with the solution that you provide, that would be my recommendation.
Gotcha. And then even kind of more focus to say, okay, focus just oil and gas or manufacturing or financial services, as a niche. And then typically the way their org structures work, and I've kind of learned, I've been on the naive side of this, and then kind of now having been burned and kind of figured out how it works and doesn't work. But typically you'd have for lack of better words, kind of partner or global account manager, but that partner is a very senior person. So somebody that's at Citi, JP, B of A, as an example, sitting over that account, that's probably almost like the equivalent of a CEO at another normal company. And as you said, they are working. So if it's B of A, they're working with Brian Moynihan and the board on initiatives. And then if kind of, Jane Doe or Joe Blow, kind of sales rep comes in, hey, let me tell you why you should deal with me. And they've got these pursuits that are billions of dollars. And if you can give them, a $5 million deal, it's like, okay, who cares? Go away. But if you're, so it'd be kind of a bad way to do it, but then perhaps kind of better ways would be, okay, usually they have a center of excellence that you kind of get the check mark to say, yes, you can work well. And then he or she then that partner has people that are further down in their food chain that would focus in some of these niche areas, which may be SaaS or cloud or, networking or kind of whatever it is. And that person then cares a lot more about what's going on. And if you can kind of help them with introductions or joint selling or kind of things like that to make some deals kind of happen, that is maybe also a kind of shorter term way, but, still very, very tough. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit on a good point. So, if you can give business to the GSI, that is critical, right? So one of the things that I mentioned earlier was the different P&Ls and the competitiveness internally at GSI. So if you can latch on to an executive sponsor, you're truly bringing value to that person. That's going to help their career internally at the company that they're working at. And I think, if you can bring this person a customer to bring revenue to the to that executive sponsor,
right,
that's going to help you greatly. And then everybody else is going to start wanting to get on the bandwagon. So to your point, yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
And then typically those people that you're kind of selling to at the GSIs, they typically would stay there kind of for longer periods of time at those companies, as opposed to other tech companies where people would tend to rotate through a little bit more, correct?
Yeah, mostly true. The only ones that I would say maybe are a little different is the India-based GSIs. It's very, transient in terms of, if they worked at HCL, they probably worked at TCS, or they probably worked at Infosys or whatever. But you're right. What's interesting too is the GSIs tend to hire industry veterans. So your B of A example, if they really truly want to get into banking, they may hire an executive in that company that really truly can speak around that industry and that language, and that's critical because that's who their persona is that they're going to be dealing with. And certainly at the board level, that's critical.
Yeah. So being the persona, being probably somebody that had an executive position at a bank or financial services company, as opposed to, say, people like us who have kind of been on the kind of go-to-market, sales side, right? There's a lot of industry knowledge that goes into play. Therefore, you're interacting with those board people. Not that we couldn't, but kind of, again, it's the persona that you're dealing with.
Yeah. The other thing, sorry to interrupt you, Andy, but you were asking about the, go to market. The other thing too is, I would say, and this is an important point, because they're just not your standard value-added resellers, you need to really, as you build out your GSI team, you need to bring senior people in. These folks have global experience. They have experience in the industries that the GSIs are selling into. They obviously have sales experience, but they're much more I would say, mature in terms of driving business with GSIs than maybe, a small reseller, just profile wise.
Yeah. And they're not shy about asking for money, right? So if you got a project, hey, do this, here's how it can be good for you. Like, okay, well, great. So fund me to pay for my people and my time and the technology to do all that, as well as you got to pay for your own people. And it's huge undertaking. So before we get off, lead the topic on the GSIs, anything else to add?
No, I think, if you look at the opportunity, I think it's great. And I think, folks that want to learn more, there's plenty of opportunity to do that. I'm happy to share as much experience as I have over my career around this with anybody that might be more interested.
Perfect. And you're very easy to find on LinkedIn.
Yep.
All right. So moving on. So you've had a lot of experiences, a lot of great companies, and I would imagine some great mentors and mentorships over the years too.
Yeah. So I actually jotted them down because I didn't want to forget anybody, and I'm sure I did. But I wasn't sure where I should put you, Randy. Should you go first or last?
Hey, I'm just happy to be in the mix.
Well, as I said at the top of the show, I have to just thank you so much for all the opportunities you gave me. And, I think relationships and teamwork matter in sales and to be successful just as a human being. And that's one of the things you really taught me. And it was amazing to me, the teamwork we had across the board in your organization. And, the sales kickoffs we put together with 5,000 people in the audience being on stage was just incredible. And, I feel like we did a lot of great things there. And, it's good to be part of that. So thank you for the opportunity and just the way you treat your family and Tommy and Billy and all the things that you've done for them. It's just credible. It's just great to actually have the opportunity to actually know you personally.
You.
Professionally.
Other kids, Shannon and Philip as well. So
Philip,
baseball,
yes.
The boys get the airtime, but yeah.
Well, I played baseball in college. That's why I
there you
related to. John Henshaw, we both know. John I knew him when he was a CIO at Verizon. He was at Boeing, HP, and then now he's actually the COO, as you probably know, at HSBC. And what he taught me is, here's a guy that actually came from Accenture, by the way. He knows technology inside and out, but he knows how technology can deliver business outcomes. And he is just an incredible guy. He sells wine too, I know, but John and I go way back, and he's a great guy and has really taught me a lot about business and technology.
Yeah, great guy. I think Blackbird Winery.
Blackbird Winery.
They got some downstairs, but really good. And I tell you, he's super busy, but he's been helpful. Probably a few times a year, I'll reach out to him for a favor for something or other. And he's been fantastic. Actually has a baseball spin on wine. He called me a couple months ago. Hey, thinking about doing this or that. What do you think? I go, great idea. Yeah. So anyway, John, great guy. Who else?
I'm wondering if his accent's changing now that he's living in the UK. I don't know. But now Bill McDermott is a staple in the industry. He and I worked together at SAP, or I should say I worked for him at SAP, and partner with him at ServiceNow. And the one thing he taught me is how to command a room. He is amazing when it comes to commanding the room. And I'm just, so happy that I had the opportunity to just pick up the phone or send him an email, and he'll always respond to me. Jason Goodall, former NTT CEO, just a genuine great guy, doing some investments now in startups, and I wish him well. Another gentleman, Nordine Bimain, who is the CEO of Atos. He and I go way back, and he's taught me a lot about true partnerships and accessibility to key executives. Mark Veda, back in the Oracle days when I was there, he helped me basically how to orchestrate big deals. We closed the largest transaction at Oracle at the time with a telco, and he taught me so much about big deals. Steve Capelli, Sybase, you may know Steve. He's since retired. He taught me data is important. Data is actually important. You got to look at the details and double click, and he's taught me a lot there. Dennis Dean at HPE, and then We worked together at Hitachi. He taught me a lot about GSI relationships and how GSIs actually work. Chris Riley, we both know teamwork, knows how to grind it out, how to build great teams. Frank Roush, you mentioned earlier, great guy. He taught me all about the channel. The channel is, it's not easy, but he's taught me a lot about, how to execute in the channel. Bethany Mayer has been on your show. Great executive presence, back on the board at HPE, and she really helped me when I got into the networking business under your organization. And she's been great as well as an executive sponsor. Antonio Neri, the one thing he taught me was never give up and always stay committed. I mean, here's a guy that went from being an engineer to the CEO of HPE. So he's been incredible. Stephen Leonard at Kyndryl, just an authentic leader. He's taught me about the strength of the entire ecosystem, and just incredible guy. Mark Hughes, DXC, Global Reach. Excuse me. He taught me a lot about.
You got through the phone book?
I got a few more. Let's see. You know who I got to say is David Knorr.
There you go.
David Knorr is, he's taught me a lot about relationships. I'm running out of.
See, you got too many.
And then, the one guy that we both know well is Dave Donatelli. So if you remember, we did that panel with customers on stage with one of the sales kickoffs. And, I did it. It was a lot of pressure. But when he turned to me and had a cocktail, he said, "Kevin, that was the best customer panel I ever had and I ever saw." So
nice. Very cool. So you had a lot of great mentorship. So there are kind of one or two things, advice that you'd give your younger self?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about listening, right? You heard the phrase, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, right? You really, truly have to listen, and you will fail. You will make mistakes, but you have to listen. You have to, kind of pick up your shorts and shake it off and move on and learn from those mistakes. So I'm never afraid to pick up the phone and call somebody. It's important that when you're young and you're starting out, that you have a real passion to learn. Because if you don't, then you probably need to go find something else that you might have a passion for. So that's what I would say.
Definitely. And it's interesting these days, I find in some sales cycles I'm involved with, back when we were growing up, I mean, I still want to try and learn, but, just in terms of, sales basics, I mean, we were sponges and would want the feedback, performance management, all that stuff. We're all over. And then now it seems like, it's kind of not quite, sales leaders or sales teams, hey, kind of don't necessarily want the feedback, which I know several CRO friends are just kind of confounded by. Then you got to be careful, just the notion of even giving feedback that you're not kind of, offending people. I mean, just kind of crazy, right?
It is. And, I think, and you've had a few guests on this and a few have said the same thing. There's no replacement for doing the ride along with a rep. To me, spending personal time with them, giving them some coaching before a sales call, recapping after the sales call, talking about what worked, what didn't work, what you could do differently. You can't put a price on that, and you can't do this virtually, in my opinion. And I think it's important that the manager gets their hands dirty and they actually get into battle with you, because we're all in it together. So that would definitely be something I would push in any team that I was part of.
Yeah. I mean, and the good leaders or great leaders do that, and they lead by example, right? I mean, there's, times where I've seen a leader does a call, they don't have the rep on, then they tell the rep in a couple of days. So it takes 3 days for the rep to then get the recap note back. And then you try and follow up, and then the leader's not there. And the rep's like, what the heck, you're expecting me to do this, but you're not doing that, as opposed to, which, you and I both know is okay. You gotta, you don't go to sleep until that recap follow-up note is done. And then you're kind of leading by example with the follow-up and what to do and how to do it, and, everything else. But
Could I do that? Yeah, I might be old school, post each week and just kind of, I don't know, I'm on 60 something of just all this, stupid stuff I just see on the, go to market and sales side. So I can always be wrong, but
No,
just crazy.
you drove that home in HPE, and I know, that went throughout the organization. Thank you notes, recap notes, whatever you want to call them, but they were key to success, I think, in many sales campaigns.
Yeah, and it just lays the groundwork, right? Okay, here's where we're at, here's what's going on, and you're laying the groundwork for what's going to happen in the sales cycle, right? As opposed to, oh, thanks, enjoyed, look forward to following up. I'm like, what the heck? That's stupid. It's stupid and useless. So anyway, what about, so GSIs we tackled well. Any other thoughts in terms of the importance of the channel or other kind of global strategic partners?
Yeah, well, channel in general. I mean, you've been doing this a long time. It's any channel leaders I've worked with, it's all about activity. It's about doubling down on the partners that want to invest in you. Just getting more partners isn't necessarily the right formula. And I think, the folks that are on the ground, the sellers, they need to look at their business as a franchise. They need to look at it in a way that says, how many touches can I get to my customer? If I have a partner, I have my direct touches, I have my marketing team. It's so important to, on a daily basis, get as many touches into your client as you can. And I think that's what the channel does. The channel drives that. It makes your life easier. And to me, I kind of scratch my head. I mean, I think it's probably more about, the companies that don't necessarily drive the channel as much as they should probably are not educated enough to understand the benefits of the channel. And I think that's part of why I feel so strongly about the channel and the GSI specifically.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I remember times I'd say, okay, to the different sales kickoff meetings, okay, everybody that's on the channel team, raise your hand, right? And then what would be otherwise direct reps don't. I'm like, no. If you're a direct rep, you're part of the channel team as well.
Exactly.
And then you get in this debate. Oh, I need resources. Rain, I need pre-sales. I need SEs. Really, how many do you want? Well, if I could get one, that's great. Okay, how about I give you 10 or 20? Oh my gosh, that's amazing. It's called your channel partners, right? You got more than you'd ever want. But there's almost this kind of control thing that sales reps, oh, I got to control whatever. I'm like, guess what? You get paid the same usually regardless, right? So you can get paid the same and you got whatever, 5 or 10 channel partners helping you sell double or triple versus you being single threaded doing it yourself. I mean, just this like crazy mindset, but just happens. And how many times have we seen that movie, right?
Absolutely. And, I've worked for companies where, you look at the regions and you say, okay, well, this region's doing better than this region. And then you look under the covers and you say, okay, well, let me look at what's the direct and indirect, variables. And all of a sudden you see, oh, the one that's doing great is primarily indirect, right? So I think there's just so much, upside to working with the channel. And, I think probably companies should do more.
Yeah, crazy. So again, a reminder, Kevin Purcell here. Title topic is GSIs, and now we're on to some other kind of great go-to-market topics. So if anybody has any questions or comments, please chime in. I always get people afterwards that say, "Oh, I was just on. That was great." And I'm like, "Okay, why don't you ask a question when I was asking for it?" But anyway, so I know you're particularly passionate. You're passionate about a lot of things, but especially storytelling to help uncover opportunities and accelerate sales cycles.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you a quick story, and it's Randy. I'll leave the names out of it for reasons. But we had back in the day when I was at a software company where we were doing some large enterprise type license deals where we would basically lock down the account. And in this situation, there was a compliance issue, and the compliance issue came up to the point where it was ready to go to litigation. And we ended up, having actually the CEOs trying to figure out how to fix the situation. So I was given the opportunity, because of my relationship with the CIO, to basically try to work this out. And we ended up working it out and ended it up closing out a large transaction. And the reason I tell you that story is because relationships actually do matter. And this person, the CIO, liked me. It was somebody that actually I could have a beer with, somebody I could talk about sports with, somebody that I can, probably even introduce my kids to and have a great relationship. And they're to this day so happy that we were able to resolve that issue. I just think taking something that could be bad and turning it into something good through relationship building is a reality, and it's something that you can actually see happen. And that was just a quick story I would share.
Totally. And then you've always been great, not just the relationship side, but really kind of getting to understand really the people and the personalities. So especially if you're in the global systems integrators, I mean, you're dealing with, probably you're meeting people for the first time. You have no idea kind of personality profiles and things like that. And I think you had mentioned there's Humantic AI, a company that you're looking at to help with that.
Yeah, so it seems like a great product. Humanix AI, actually, if you remember the old disk technology, right? This is an opportunity to gather data. The AI product gathers data from a source from LinkedIn, and can help identify if you're in the middle of a sales campaign and you have all your key stakeholders identified, decision makers, influencers, recommenders. This solution actually can help you determine how you could approach each of these individuals, if you should even approach these individuals. They talk about it gives you some feedback and input around their personalities and how they may address certain questions. And what's great too is that it actually helps you develop an email that is much more pointed to the point where you'll actually get more return on the investment of putting together an email. So to me, it should close more deals. It should shorten the sales cycle, and your close rates will go up. So to me, something like that, and this product, everything I've seen about it is great. So, I would encourage people out there that are looking for a tool. I know Gen AI and AI is, like every topic that pops up, that's included in it every day. But I would say that this is a product that you should take a look at.
Very, very cool. And we have Kristen Carey, the question. Thanks, Kristen. Our firm works with many GSIs, such as Accenture. We find it difficult to gain their attention, interest to run marketing, sales programs due to their size. Any recommendations on how best to engage them?
Yeah, well, that's a tough question, but I will answer it the best I can. So maybe Accenture isn't the right one. I'll just throw that out there, right? Because I know Accenture is big, and they have a lot of partners, by the way. But one thing that I will tell you is that, and this is true for most GSIs, 80 to 90% or so, and I'm giving you a rough range, of their revenue comes from existing customers. So that means that they have to grow their business through innovation. So if you could come up with a way, Kristen, to create innovation for Accenture, something that they don't have today, something that is maybe small to you, but is a differentiator, something that they don't have. They're always looking for the shiny nickel. I brought up Gen I, Randy, but Gen I, soon as that started taking off, every GSI says, I'm investing $1 billion and I'm creating a practice. And every GSI wants to be known as the smartest Gen AI company out there. So to me, Kristen, you need to look at, what is something that you can bring them that makes you relevant to them. And I think you'll get some traction.
Yeah, definitely. And it's hard to, finding a niche in a swim lane where you can help. And if not Accenture, then, other ones as well. And, Kristen, I'd say, feel free to follow up with Kevin offline. You could probably get a deeper dive there as well. Let's see here. So we are getting to the end. So you've been awesome. And Kristen says, thank you. And Tucker also posted, there's a free link that Humantech has given us. So you get it free, I think, week or two, leveraging that. So with us kind of Sandler, awesome long time kind of sales training company, any kind of one or two kind of best practices that you found over the years around the topic of sales training?
Yeah, well, specifically for the channel, I mean, I've used iPad training, which is under the channel company. And the reason I've used it is because I think that the partner managers need to understand how the partners are financially, how they operate. What is their operating model? What's important to them? When it comes to margins, what kind of margins are they looking for? What kind of deals are they looking for? I also think it's important, if you talk about GSIs, understanding what's critically important to them around technology and how each of those complex organizations work together. So how people get incented, how people get incented is how they're going to behave. And I think you got to find training that you can look under the covers at a partner or an end customer and understand what's important to them. And if that training can help you, then that's good. I think also role-playing training is very, very impactful. We used to do that, Randy, at HP, and I think role-playing is critical because you're not only telling a story to your customer's CIO, but you're also talking to maybe the sustainability officer at an account, or maybe you're talking to a CFO, and the messages are different for each of those personas. And I know you've had many speakers talk about that, but that's absolutely important. So if you can find training to do that, that's great.
Totally. And we touched on a little bit before, but I had Jill Harris from GoTo on a couple of weeks ago, and her topic was kind of growth mindset, which is really kind of, you need to be in that mindset of wanting to grow, wanting to develop. So it's sort of, if I were a leader, I'd say, look, do you want to grow or not? Not to be a jerk, but do you want to grow or not? And if so, you got to be a sponge. So leveraging a Sandler that has great, online repository of training, you don't need to necessarily go and sit there for 5 days in a room with somebody, right? There's so much content there that you can get, and anything that you want to do or, different or better, strongly encourage everybody to check out Sandler. So you've been awesome. Thanks so much. So for folks, I know I like to ask if there's any PG Randy story you want to tell.
So it is a PG. I have a few that aren't, but this one is PG. So I remember you had a team meeting. We all went to the Oracle Open World event, and the band that was playing was Fergie and the Black Eyed Peas. And we were standing in the front of the stage, and you were getting upset at me because Fergie was looking at me and not at you.
Right.
But, yeah, I mean that. But again, we used to have some great times, great sales meetings at a lot of these events. And actually, that's a great point because we weren't just having meetings by ourselves. We went to Oracle, right? We used to go to other channel partners, and we used to treat our channel partners like gold when we brought them out to our sales events. So, it's really important that, you do these type of activities with your partners and customers.
Yeah. And even integrating them in, right? We started doing, we'd have the, partners. It was a, internal sales kickoff. Great. Let's bring the partners. We should treat them, everybody all the same. And there's some partners that compete with each other, but, kind of if you're a company, high tides float all boats, right? So if everybody's selling more, it's good for everybody, and there's plenty to go around. So Kevin, thank you so much. You've been fantastic. Next week, we're actually going to have on Thursday, episode number 146, Chris McCarthy, who's executive at Microsoft. He's been a long time services and consulting leader, and his title topic is leveraging services and consulting as a competitive advantage. So we go from GSIs to services and consulting. And Tucker, thanks for your help behind the scenes. Everybody have a great week.
Thank you.